Now in this video, I'm going to tell you a story about how I almost quit my job on the first week at one of the companies I was working for, which I won't name. And it was due to the kind of corporate culture. And I wanted to share this story with you because I thought you might find it quite relatable. Now, this job was a smaller firm and it was quite a good opportunity for me because I was more advanced in my career. If you're new to the channel, I've worked for over 10 years in the finance industry at companies like Goldman's and Morgan Stanley. And what happened was later on in my career, I had the opportunity to work with C-suite level executives and help them kind of organize the risk management and finances around their firm. And they had many global operations. They had very good opportunities because I could work from home 5 days a week. That was great. They had offices in London, in all the kind of offshore tax locations you could think of, Jersey, in the Caribbean, all those kind of offshore locations, anything from Panama to Cyprus and Malta and things like that. What was quite good about that is that I was looking forward to that opportunity, but due to some of the corporate culture, it made it a bit uncomfortable and I almost quit after starting within a week, right? So I just want to go through in a bit of detail. So essentially, I go into the office for the first day in central London. I know it's going to be a bit of the kind of fake nice office politics you're used to, nothing too complicated. But then I go in, and then after collecting my laptop, speaking with one or two team members there, I was basically trapped in a situation where I was pretending to work at a desk because I just wanted to collect my laptop and go home. At that point, I'd kind of been done with the corporate thing. I wanted to start my YouTube channel and just make that work. And I was stuck at the desk pretending to work. You know, we all know what it's like when you're at the desk pretending to work, particularly when you're starting a job, whether you're junior or not. You kind of start a job and you're kind of pretending to do a bit of work, which is just a bit ridiculous. You know, you're pretending to do some training where you're like, okay, this is just a bit annoying. And then, so the HR was sitting next to me and the HR was like, oh, let's go for a lunch with all the new joiners. So she took myself and another woman. So we're going to go through some nicknames. We had the HR Karen, right, who I'd call a woke enforcer, as you'll understand in a few short minutes. Then we had another woman who joined, a blonde white woman who I'd call the entitled Becky, the office princess, right? Now, what ended up happening, she was a new joiner, I was a new joiner, and then we were kind of said, let's go out for lunch for the three of us. I really didn't want to go. It was a bit awkward because, you know, you have two women who are going to be talking about whatever interests them, and then you're kind of on the outskirts, you're like the third wheel. So we went to somewhere nearby, which was like a little kind of nice fresh food kind of deli place, which was quite nice actually. It was a nice place to go. I know it's in the future, if I'm in that area, I'd definitely check it out. So they had like anything fresh, like fresh bakery, fresh sandwiches and pizzas and whatever, all like freshly made, which is good. So I got like a slice of pizza, and then we went back or I got a salad bar. I went to the salad bar or something. I can't remember exactly, but we got something to eat. And then as we're heading back to the canteen area of this small office they had, because they have all these small offices globally, and part of that benefit of working from home comes from them trying to save money and not have a massive office space in London. So we're going back to the canteen area, and I just know this is going to get awkward. I know there's going to be a bunch of questions asked where I'm probably going to be expected to parrot the politically correct opinion on any topic, because everything in this Western liberal feminist culture has to pander around the Becky or the Karen, right? And now I've got a Karen here and a Becky here. Basically, you have to pander to them. So we're catching the lift back up to the canteen area, and the Becky asks, oh, have you watched the latest Barbie movie? And this was that Barbie movie with Margot Robbie, you know, the Barbie movie that came out, I think, a few years ago. And I just said, oh, no, I haven't watched it. It just doesn't seem something I'd be into. And at that point, I really hadn't watched it. I saw it actually a few years later when I was catching a flight. It was like the only movie I'd recognized. So I thought, let me see what it's about. But all I'd heard online about it was the typical kind of commentating, right-wing commentators, anyone from a Shapiro to a Garepi, if you're familiar with the names. They were like, oh, this is just kind of the typical feminist propaganda or whatever. And I mean, I don't want to waste my time watching something when it's clearly either going to be, it's either obviously targeted at the female demographic, or it's just going to be kind of very divisive. You know, when they were marketing it, they were marketing in that way, right? Even the whole Ryan Gosling was meant to be playing this kind of pushover guy in a movie. You could even tell from the adverts from it. And I don't really keep up with Hollywood movies because they're all psyops and propaganda, right? So I just give the standard answer. Oh, I haven't watched it. Oh, yeah. Did you find it interesting then? Even though I couldn't care about the answer. And then she goes on about how much she liked the movie, and it has a twist at the end, which I found out later. But it was kind of like, okay, this is what I'm explaining in a very small ways. Even these can be considered microaggressions or kind of micro moments where you realize that the corporate world just isn't fit for men to even speak freely in any way, shape, or form. So I keep my opinion to myself about that Barbie movie. And then she goes off on a tangent. Like, typically, you know how it works for these Beckys in the work environment. They have to make themselves the center of attention. Everything has to be about her and what's going on in her personal life or whatever. And so she recently joined this quite expensive gym, which was like around $300 a month. I think it's called Third Space, and I've seen it actually before in the past. And I think it's probably a bit like Equinox if you're in America. So it's more like a high-end gym, and it's more like people use it as like a social networking thing rather than using the gym facilities. But it's known for being a higher-end gym if people are working corporate jobs. So she's talking about going there, doing some yoga. She's talking about how she doesn't want to cook for her husband because that takes too much time. So they're getting a meal prep company or some kind of takeaway service for their adults, for her and her husband, and getting some other food from like childcare or something to make some food for the kids. And this kind of interests me because this is something I've heard time and time again from the girl boss, from the Karens or the Beckys. They really neglect their children or their husband to do what? They're not doing a lot of work in the office. They get the whole office kind of centered around them. If you've seen my other videos, and then they're not doing much in their personal life to take care of their husband and kids. And then a lot of the work kind of gets delegated to men around them. And I instantly saw that because when we were going on this little work lunch, just the three of us, me, the HR Karen, and the Becky salesperson, we had this other guy who'd come, who was joining us because he had like made some food in the canteen, like warmed it up, I think in the microwave, like some rice and chicken or something. And he was there too. So I wanted to talk to him because it was my first day. I'd be working with a sales team, even though my role wasn't a sales role. And I was going to just think, okay, well, how does the business work? How they're generating money? Because there's a lot of gray areas around this, particularly if you're working for a company that is going to be, you know, doing offshoring around tax. There's a lot of gray areas there. Obviously, they follow the law. They're a legitimate company, but can get a bit dicey. So I was interested on how they do their sales process and how they ensure we're not taking on, you know, dodgy clients that are money laundering or, you know, breaking the law. So I'm talking to this guy, trying to get a bit of information, but we can't really have that conversation, even though we're all four at a table. We have to divert back to the Becky, give her the attention she's looking for. And the thing is, again, like anything she says, we only have to agree with her, support her, have the politically correct opinions. We can't say anything that goes against the liberal feminist white woman, you know, can't say anything that goes against their entitlement and their center of attention type of behavior. So I just, you know, we all just end up having to kind of end whatever conversations we're trying to have on other topics, that because the center of attention has to constantly be on her. And then when it wasn't that, we had to divert to listen to the HR Karen, who was slightly older. So the Becky was, I would say, in her early 30s, and the Karen was in her early 40s, I think. And she was telling us another ridiculous story. She wanted to go on vacation with her family, but her daughter had been really brainwashed by the whole climate agenda. And her daughter did not want to go on an airplane to a holiday because she convinced that taking a flight would be bad for the environment. And her and her husband, I think they were trying to convince their kid that no, it's fine, we can take this flight, we can go on a vacation. And this is really symptomatic of what happens when people are just focused on their career and their kids get brainwashed, whether it's by gender pronouns or the climate agenda. Imagine having to convince your kids that no, we can go on a vacation, we can take a flight, it's okay, it's not going to destroy the environment. This is how ridiculous it is. This is the society you're living in continually in the West as a man. It's like, I don't even know how you're meant to deal with it. And again, I can't give my honest opinion on the ridiculous feminist propaganda in the Barbie movie. I hadn't watched it at the time, but I can't comment on that. We can't deviate from making the Becky the center of attention. And if we're not doing that, we have to listen to this woke HR woman talk about how her daughter is, you know, a climate activist and they can't convince her otherwise, you know. And it's just like, what are you meant to do in that conversation as a man? Let me know in the comments, because I know we got a few female women who watch the channel sometimes. I haven't checked the demographics, but I'm sure there's some I've seen in the comments section. How are you meant to respond to that beyond having a bland correct answer, oh, okay, hopefully you enjoy the vacation then. That's the only thing you could say. You can't say the climate agenda is based on the economic forum and controlling people's movements and free speech and some form of like socialism that that they want to introduce with digital ID, CBDCs and things like that. You can't even deviate into that, right? You got to listen to this nonsense, and these people are given positions of power above you. HR could get me fired technically if I have a different opinion, and the Becky could also have me fired for calling me a misogynist, for example, if I had a different opinion. Bear in mind, unlike some of the other bigger banks that I worked at that don't have a probation period, this role at the kind of more niche finance firm, it did have a probation period of 3 months. So I was extra careful the first starting period, particularly because the job market was slow. I wanted to see, you know, how things would go, even though I was kind of interviewing on the side. That's why I was considering leaving. But then I ended up staying, as I'll go into later in the video. So this is what I mean. So we're dealing with this Becky, we're dealing with this Karen, and it's like I can't talk with anything serious about business with the sales guy because we just have to listen to the woman vent. And this is typically what happens in the work environment when you have a lot of the girl boss archetypes or the Karens, is you can't really discuss work much. It becomes a side thing to discuss right at the end, or very short spurts of discussing work, because they have to be the center of attention and the world has to revolve around them and what's ever going on in their personal life or however they feel on that particular day about their emotions. And then what ends up happening is that was my first day on the job, and it was quite funny. I take my laptop, I leave early without creating a fuss. I just say, oh, okay, I'm going to take my laptop and log in from home. And I did that actually. I went home. To be honest with you, because I knew it was a work from home job, I didn't really want to do much work. I was focused on building my YouTube channel, doing other things, and it was I was already planning my exit from the corporate world. So I was also jet lagged because I got back from another trip. So I was kind of out of it, you know, the first few days. And I was thinking about quitting, thinking about maybe looking for another job where it'd be more in the office, maybe more the standard banking roles I was going to do. But I thought, let me stick with it for a few weeks, see how it goes, continue job interviews elsewhere. And then what ends up happening is I kind of log in, continue my work for a few days. And then my manager, who's based in Jersey at the time, to an offshore location, she wants to have a visit with myself and a few other team members. And I know what that means. Right, during a probation period, they basically want to test your personality in person, because we did all the interviews via Zoom. So then I end up getting a short flight from London to Jersey, and it was funded by the firm, of course. I didn't have to pay for that. A few other team members went there because, like I said, we have team members globally, so we all met in Jersey for like a few days. And during that, like I say, they're not really testing your ability to do the job, because at that point I had enough experience. I kind of showed some of the work I was doing in the first few days. They weren't going to really be testing my knowledge. They're really testing your personality. So this is again to show the female privilege. If we want to talk about how women are oppressed, never ending in society, we went through the Becky, we went from the Karen. Now we're going to talk about the MAWW, the Morse, the middle-aged white woman, who typically have a lot of power, a lot of finances, a lot of power of the corporate culture, and powerful financially because they've been working in very senior roles that they've been artificially propped up in. And when you have a society full of castrated, censored men and a society full of entitled, empowered women, you're going to have all these weird social dynamics perpetually throughout society and culture, and in the corporate world too. So just to give you a bit of background to her, she was a C-suite level executive for this finance firm. She was in her early 40s, and I found out briefly after I started she was going to be retiring soon. She asked me what I was into. Firstly, I said, into UFC. Sometimes I watch that because I thought that was a safe topic, because everything's so political now. And then they say, UFC, what's that? Is that cage fighting? That's kind of barbaric, isn't it? So I didn't want to discuss into that. And then, because the co-worker was from Ireland, I said, Conor McGregor, he's like Irish. He's one of the most successful guys in this niche. He went on to become a businessman, sells whiskey and tailored suits and things like that. And then this was before the recent controversy about him doing something inappropriate with a woman and then being found innocent or whatever it was, right? So at that time she kind of flipped out. She's like, that guy, he was mistreating women, he was doing this. And then I was trying to mention some other positive things about him, but we couldn't do that because we had to turn it into, men are terrible, they're taking advantage of women. So, okay, can't talk about UFC, can't talk about Conor McGregor, which I thought we'd have a rapport on because she's from Ireland and I know a bit about Conor McGregor. Then I talked about the benefits of homeschooling kids because we were having a discussion about raising kids, even though I don't have kids. But we can't do that because they kind of support the leftist ideology in politics, in schools with gender pronouns and things like that. So can't do that. And then somehow the conversation deviated into a bit of American politics. And I thought, oh, from what I know around the time is that Florida had Governor DeSantis and he was quite pro-freedom, people having more autonomy rather than government control about the woke ideology. So I didn't say anything too crazy like that. I just said, oh, it's good there's a bit more control over what kids can consume because their parents are concerned about some of the things in school. And it was like, okay, we can't really discuss that. So it's like, what do we have to discuss? And then the funny thing that came up, and I mean funny because it's so divisive, we had another middle-aged white woman with us and she mentioned the conflict in the Middle East. Now, I don't want to get into that on the channel, but it was like, it was one of those things where you know how these liberal feminist white women work, right? They always want to virtue signal what is the most politically correct opinion. But in that situation, they can't pick either side because if you pick one side, you're anti the other or you're phobic the other. And it was kind of a conundrum where they didn't know what to say. And they didn't know my background, so they thought I might pick one particular side of the other. So it got super awkward and uncomfortable, particularly because the woman from Ireland, obviously there have been issues between Ireland and Northern Ireland and Britain and whatever, which I won't get into either. So you create all this awkward dynamics, but this is what I mean about like politics and political correctness infiltrating everything. It's like, can we just have a discussion about culture or something just neutral? But we can't even do that because everything's become tainted with wokeism or leftism or liberalism or feminism, whatever you want to call it. Even if we avoid the serious topics like a digital ID or the climate or gender issues, you can't have banter, you can't have any opinion that's not censored, politically correct view, not even much discussion about work can be had, right? So we had this team meeting for 2 days in Jersey and it was just the typical hilarious thing where you've ever been to these type of work meetings with management or that demographic in general. There's no real progress, right? They give you a bit of information in very disorganized ways. They're not really presenting things in a very structured format. That's something I realized with these type of people. Like nothing's ever structured and organized in a very logical way. It's just like, oh, I remember that. Let me tell you that. Let me explain that to you. And it's like, okay, can we go through things logically and then I can have a logical workflow? There's so much chaos that comes from these type of people and the disorganization. So anyway, I was still thinking about quitting. That was roughly a week or so into my job. And then I was already, like I say, going on with job hunting. And I was thinking, what is going to be the outcome after 3 months? Because I managed to do the job all right and no real issues. And I passed the probation period after 3 months. And I ended up staying there because I thought, okay, this is work from home. I can work on my side hustle, my business that I'm working on now, you can see on the channel. And also I was thinking, like, if I go into another corporate role, I'd have something similar because the corporate world has been poisoned by woke culture and DEI. And this is what I mean, there's some lessons I'm going to give you here, right, before we move on, is that what are the kind of solutions here. Now, before I give you some solutions, I just want to let you know around that time, and there's certain things I don't typically discuss publicly, but I was speaking with a mental health therapist because I was talking about some of these dynamics in work. And what's interesting is, again, another white woman, and I'm not blaming everything on the liberal feminist white woman, but they do hold so much positions of power in the corporate world, in the medical world, in politics and government. If you look at the UK government right now, if you look at many corporate roles in finance and tech, in the medical world and things like that. So what was interesting about her is she told me her background, that therapist, and she'd worked with people of different demographics. She'd worked with people in prisons, young kids in schools. She's worked with me, other professionals. She's worked in major industries and things like that. And then what ended up happening is I was speaking with her and I was explaining these dynamics, those specific examples I mentioned to you now and other things I'm mentioning going through corporate. And she would often label what I'm saying as, oh, I'm dealing with social anxiety, right? Or it's just how things are and you just can't say certain opinions and that's just not allowed to say, unfortunately, some of the opinions are expressed on their channel. And I get it to a certain extent, but how long is that sustainable? And I realized, that free speech restriction, that the free speech restrictions are just not sustainable over the long term, right? And you see people are cracking up now. You see a bit of a rollback in America with more free speech. In the UK, they're doubling down on limiting free speech, but it just makes it so difficult, right? You can't label all this social anxiety, men have a loneliness epidemic. It's like you don't really have free speech. It makes sense why men are dropping out. And then what was interesting is, even though she was she came across like a liberal feminist white woman, she was still kind of based. She could still see through a lot of the nonsense, right? I could tell she wasn't in agreement with gender pronouns, the 15-minute cities, some of the climate agenda, things like that. But what I realized is when it came to the question of woman and accountability for woman, or the social control women have in a lot of these dynamics, she just made excuses for it, or she would just constantly glaze over it. It would always be moving on to the next topic. It's like she couldn't handle that, even though she could handle some more difficult discussions, maybe about other issues I was bringing up, right? So this is what I mean. This demographic, they kind of have a natural self-protective mechanism where even though they know others are talking nonsense about those topics I mentioned earlier, we just have to tolerate it, right? And they don't understand how destructive it is, the amount of power they have and how they limit other people. Now, when I look at some of the articles that I might put on the screen right now, it makes sense, right? What's actually going on in this society, in the sense that, society's kind of failing men and boys because you just can't interact socially with this type of dynamic for much longer, right? It's already driving men out. There's a reason why so many men spend so much time online, on internet forums, on Discord, on Telegram, 4chan, whatever website you want to say. Is like, it's just not making sense to speak publicly freely, right? And that's why you do need to have male-only spaces. And this used to be the gym, or in the past it would be coffee shops and things like that. But it's just not sustainable the way things are, right? It feels like your free speech is constantly being restricted and being monitored. That's what I was looking for. Monitored and supervised by people around you. Like any time a woman might snitch on you to your company, to the police, to someone, authority, some other man, to enforce this system of gynocracy on you, right? And like Andrew Tate, being a symptom and not the problem, right? It's basically feminism's the problem, but they're going to blame Andrew Tate or someone else. Now, before I go into like kind of 4 different approaches in terms of solutions, if you're finding this relatable, right, I help my clients through a 12-week coaching program to outsmart office politics, increase their salary and take control over their career, which I managed to do over, like I say, working at some major finance firms like Goldman's and Morgan Stanley, right? So you're trapped in like fake PC office politics where honesty gets punished. I'll show you how to protect your reputation, earn more income, 20 to 30% more. That's the goal we aim for. And build real freedom through your finances and your career through making strategic moves. So there's a link in description if you want to speak with me directly. But let's go back to some solutions here. Now, if you're feeling trapped in the long house, now the long house is a concept you might have seen online on some of my previous videos. It's kind of a right-wing concept where they talk about how a long house, if you imagine a long house with no kind of doors, essentially something you'd see in like farmland in the country, whereby you have a large house and a woman's kind of monitoring everything going on because she's like the mother hen type of archetype. And that's what you have in this society. This is what people mean when they talk about the government being a nanny state, or a gynocracy, terms like that, if you're familiar with that, where you have this kind of overly burdensome political correctness, care about emotions, feelings over facts, that type of dynamic. That's what you have from what I've described here. It's not really about the work, right? The work I was doing during this time period wasn't that difficult. It was things I'd done before, slightly new systems, slightly new people, a bit more management than I'd done before, which I like doing. So let's go into this. Why did I stay there then? I could have quit, could have found another job. I was already in advanced stages and interviews elsewhere. What I thought about is what the long-term strategic role is for me, right? And the major selling point of this role was the remote work, because I have a remote job. I can spend a lot of my time during the day focus on my side hustle. Also, I was working with C-suite level executives, and I've done some of that before, but this was like on a daily basis, so it's a massively important role. Then it would make the next job easier to get because it would give me some time to work there before I had moved on to perhaps job hunting when the job market could have been more rough. And also because I was working with those senior people and I was managing a team, it would help me with my future roles too, to demonstrate more of those skills of senior management, relationship management, and also managing a global team of, I had employees based everywhere from India to Eastern Europe to other parts of Asia like Malaysia, and in Latin America too. So I was managing a global team. So it's quite interesting work to do. So the thing is, and then also if I'm in a managerial role, I can delegate a lot of the work to the outsourcing team. Some people located in the low cost of living locations, they could actually get more work, have more job security, because that's what they were looking for. And I had more time to focus on work meetings. Also, because I was working from home, I could focus on my side hustle too. So that was a good option. That's why I stayed there, because the long-term play was for that financial freedom. And that's relatable to you, because you need to focus on why you're in certain roles, because it might not be the most glamorous role. That company I was working at, that I won't name, wasn't necessarily a name brand company that you'd heard of, right? But they were quite successful in the offshoring business. So I learned a lot about that laws and regulation in case I want to register my company abroad. So I learned that. I managed my time effectively working from home. I kind of got a better work-life balance. I really thought carefully about all the opportunities out there outside the traditional corporate world, whether it's remote work, but also there's plenty of people who are running successful businesses that have them listed offshore. And you typically think about, okay, how are people making money outside the system? You probably think, okay, some people are making money online as content creators and influencers. Some people are making money online through real estate. People are in the crypto industry, all these different type of niches, selling kind of rare items that they might sell. You know, people buy and sell things on eBay, making a decent living. All other types of skills, and exposed me to how many clients we'd have. And typically when you hear about people running their own business, you always hear that statistic, 90% of businesses fail within the first year or whatever. And I don't really focus on those type of things, because a lot of people start businesses, they don't know what they're doing. You're going to hear all this negative type of media propaganda about starting your own business, typically because, you know, they want to keep people in their stable kind of 9-to-5 world. They don't want you to think outside the box. And when I was thinking about all the clients we have, all the businesses they have registered globally, the world isn't black and white. It's not that, almost everything that can be done is done by a major corporation like a Starbucks or a Budweiser. You've got plenty of people who are making spaces for themselves within a niche market, and they're running successful businesses. So don't get too black-pilled or disheartened when you hear about, you know, all the negative media that, you can never make it in life, you should just put up with what you've got. All the big corporations, they run everything, the elite are gonna get what they want at the end of the day. This is all demoralization propaganda. So it opened my mind up a lot more to other opportunities out there. And there are lots of people making a ton of money either at this company or the clients who are working with this company. It's not just the big banks that are making tons of money and high salaries, right? Loads of people are making money very quietly, right? It could be a small financial services firm. It could be a private equity, hedge funds, having their own business, living in a low cost of living location, investing aggressively. There's all sorts of ways. It's not just, you have to get that fancy corporate job. And when I work with my clients, I try to make sure they're thinking about all the opportunities available to them. So the other options I had, if I didn't stay at that job and focus on my side hustle, I could have left soon and job hopped, right? And this is an acronym that's important, ABA, always be applying. And again, this is a probation period of 3 months. So I kind of had the opportunity whereby if I resigned in the first 3 months, I'd only have to give them 1 week's notice. But if I resigned after 3 months as like a permanent employee who passed probation, I'd have a 3-month notice period, which would mean I couldn't start another job until 3 months had passed, which was a bit ridiculous. But then I was also considering, if I pick another job, and I did have other interviews at other fintech crypto firms, they would want me in the office, even though they initially advertised these roles as work from home. Then they were like, we need you in the office 3 days a week, or maybe 4 or 5. And I was thinking, hold on, it is a good company, but why would I go and be in the office 5 days a week, right? It doesn't really benefit me. And some of these other companies, they're very disorganized and messy. And the company I'm mentioning that I was working at but like I said, the massive benefit was working from home at a time when almost all jobs are sending people back to the office. So I decided not to do option 2, but that's an option for you, right? You can either do option 1, which is the long-term play, like I'm staying in this role because it has many benefits that work for me, working from home, working with senior management, being a manager myself, leveraging that to the next opportunity. That's option 1. because you see benefits of the role, or option two, you're gonna leave. You're not gonna stay, you're gonna leave. And when you leave, you're gonna go and find an opportunity that's gonna pay more and maybe give you more of a career boost, even if you're working in the office and not getting to work from home. Then option number three is faking it till you make it. And what I mean by that is kind of playing along excessively with all the political correctness, doing the soul destroying daily behavior in the office, going to work socials till you make it and you fit in. And they would actually have work socials often on Thursdays, like Thursday work drinks after work in London, and people would go into the office and do that just to network. And thankfully, like I say, this was work from home. I would never go to those work socials. I didn't intend on staying at the company too long anyway, because I was planning to leave, as I mentioned before. And also, I mean, I don't know how to say this nicely, but a lot of the team events were organized by either the girl boss feminist type of woman that I mentioned before, or it'd be men who were, part of the rainbow flag community. And I saw them in the office, one of the main guys who worked in HR. And I was like, do I really want to hang out with these people? What would the conversation constitute, right? What would have to talk such a bland conversation that would have to be about some kind of feminist media on Netflix or whatever. What these guys are going to do on their holiday or whatever is just going to be like a substanceless conversation. Not even with people I'd want to have a bit of banter or jokes with, like other guys or women who would be more chill. And it's a bit like, why would I spend my Thursday night doing that? So I would never actually go to those, but I know other people who did. And the thing is, like I say, and this goes back to my initial point, why men quit jobs, why men get more detached from the work environment, because it's like that expectation put on them is like being put under torture, right? On your Thursday night, I'd rather be hanging out at home by myself, or spending some time in nature, or meet a friend that I want to hang out with, going to a coffee shop or whatever, rather than going to these type of events. And then, so option one is stay for the benefits, which is what I did. Option two is leave and job hop. Option three is be super fake and try to fit in and maybe, have that really negative impact your emotions and your mental health. And option four is feel like, I can't do this, I'm going to speak up. Right? And if you speak up and be like, oh, I really don't agree with that Barbie movie. I don't agree with that climate agenda. I don't agree with that rainbow flag. I don't agree with your opinion on Conor McGregor. UFC isn't cage fighting. Kids need to be homeschooled due to the gender pronouns in high schools. This is my view on the Middle Eastern conflict. And whatever else it would be, is that you're just going to get cancelled, right? You're going to get cancelled because these are such divisive things. You'd be labelled a misogynist, you'll be labelled anti-this or phobic that, you'll just be cancelled. And all the other men who playing along with these women and their politically correct opinions, typically liberal men, they're just going to play along with it. And other guys who might share your opinion, the based guys, they're just going to be cowardly and be quiet because they're thinking about how they're going to get paid. So this is the difficulty that most men are in, right? And I hope you understand over the last, 20 minutes to half an hour of this video, how challenging it can be, right? And this is how I try and help my clients. So I learned this for over a decade in the industry. And in my career coaching, not only do we have one-to-one sessions over the 12-week program, I also have many course videos on dealing with the girl boss archetype, dealing with toxic management and difficult co-workers, and whether you should stay at a job or not, dealing with a promotion or a layoff, building your financial freedom and working on side hustles so you can quit earlier than others who are going to be stuck in a dead-end 9-to-5 for the rest of their life, building that financial freedom. And a lot of that comes from my real experience. So if you want to work with me, there is a link in description, and I look forward to talking with you. Let me know how you feel about this story, about my experience working at this company, and I look forward to speaking with you directly. There's a link in description for that. 2 recommended videos on your screen right now, and I'll see you next time.